He had just returned from America. He seemed to blend into the crowd of supplicants and dignitaries. To the guards and officials, he was just another member of the sprawling Al Saud dynasty paying his respects. His presence would not have raised any immediate alarms. Family was everything. And a nephew approaching his uncle to offer a traditional greeting was the most normal sight in the world. But beneath his calm exterior, a dark and complex story was unfolding, a story that had followed him across continents. The king entered the room. A hush fell. All eyes turned to him. He was a figure of authority, yet he carried it with a gentle grace. He began to move towards the waiting Kuwaiti delegation. His focus was on his guests, on the diplomacy and courtesy that defined his reign. The stage was set for a state occasion, but a personal tragedy was about to hijack the scene. In those few seconds as the king walked across the polished floor, the fate of a nation and the life of its leader hung precariously in the balance. The world was about to lose one of its most formidable figures, and nobody in that sunlit room saw it coming. To understand the shock of that day, you have to understand the man. King Faisal was not just a monarch. He was the primary architect of modern Saudi Arabia. Born in 1906, his life spanned a period of incredible transformation. He had witnessed the birth of his nation and had played a pivotal role in its development from a young age. As a young man, he traveled the world as a diplomat, representing his father, King Abdulaziz, the founder of the kingdom. These early experiences gave him a unique global perspective. He understood the West, but he was also deeply rooted in his own culture and faith. This dual understanding would become the hallmark of his reign. When he ascended to the throne in 1964, he inherited a country rich in oil but struggling with its identity. Faisal embarked on a path of careful, deliberate reform. He knew that to survive and prosper, Saudi Arabia had to modernize. He invested heavily in infrastructure, building roads, hospitals, and schools. Crucially, he introduced education for girls, a revolutionary step at the time that he championed against fierce conservative opposition. He managed this delicate balancing act with immense skill. He pushed his country forward while always reassuring the religious establishment that the nation's Islamic identity would remain its core. He was a reformer, but a cautious one. His influence extended far beyond his own borders. King Faisal became a towering figure on the world stage. He was a staunch anti-communist and a key ally of the West during the Cold War. Yet, he was also a passionate advocate for pan-Arab and pan-Islamic causes. This complex political stance made him a respected, if sometimes unpredictable, player in global affairs. He commanded attention in the halls of power from Washington to Cairo. His quiet dignity and sharp intellect earned him the respect of world leaders. He was seen as a voice of reason and stability in a turbulent Middle East. This global influence was demonstrated most powerfully during the 1973 oil crisis. In response to Western support for Israel during the Yom Kippur War, King Faisal led an oil embargo. The world suddenly woke up to the power of OPEC and the importance of Saudi oil. Gas prices soared, economies shuddered, and the West was forced to reckon with the political power of the Arab world. It was a bold, high-stakes move that cemented Faisal's legacy as a leader who was unafraid to use his nation's economic leverage to achieve his political goals. He had put Saudi Arabia at the center of the global map. The assassin was not a stranger, he was family. Prince Faisal bin Musaid was the son of King Faisal's half-brother. His story is a tragic counterpoint to the king's tale of statesmanship and success. The young prince had a difficult life. His father was an older, more conservative figure, and his own brother, Prince Khalid bin Musaid, had been killed years earlier in a clash with security forces. This earlier tragedy cast a long shadow over the family. Prince Khalid had been protesting the introduction of television in Saudi Arabia, and his death was a source of deep, unresolved grief and perhaps resentment. Faisal bin Musaid was sent to the United States to study. It was hoped the experience would shape him into a useful member of the royal family. But his time in America was troubled. He attended universities in California and Colorado, but he struggled to find his place. He was known to have problems with drugs, and was once arrested for trafficking LSD. He was seen by many as a lost and aimless young man, caught between the strict traditions of his homeland and the freewheeling culture of 1970s America. He was a prince without a purpose, wrestling with personal demons far from home. After his troubled stint abroad, he returned to Saudi Arabia. The kingdom he came back to was a world away from the life he had been living. He reportedly complained to his family that he was unfulfilled and that his allowance was not enough. There was a sense of alienation, a feeling of not belonging anywhere. Was he angry at the system? Was he seeking revenge for his brother's death a decade earlier, or was he simply a deeply disturbed individual? These questions swirled around him. His family tried to help, but the prince remained an enigma, his motivations and his inner turmoil hidden from view. On that fateful day, he joined the queue at the palace. He was there ostensibly to greet his uncle, the king. This was the perfect cover. In a culture where respect for elders and family ties are paramount, a nephew approaching his uncle would not have been seen as a threat. He was able to get close to the king, bypassing the tightest layers of security without raising suspicion. He was an insider, using the very traditions the king championed as a weapon. His troubled past, his family history, and his personal grievances were all converging on this one terrible moment. The moment of the assassination was shockingly simple and brutal. As Prince Faisal bin Musaid approached the king, he leaned forward as if to give the traditional kiss of greeting on his uncle's head. The king, in turn, leaned forward to receive it, a gesture of affection and acceptance. It was in that instant of vulnerability that the prince pulled out a pistol. He fired 2 shots directly into the king's head. For a moment there was stunned silence, a collective disbelief. Then, chaos erupted. Guards swarmed the prince and the king collapsed to the floor. The architect of a nation had been struck down in the heart of his own palace. The news spread like a wildfire, first through the kingdom and then across the globe. A profound sense of shock and grief enveloped Saudi Arabia. The people mourned a leader they saw as a father figure, a man who had guided them into the modern age with a steady hand. World leaders expressed their horror and offered condolences. Flags were flown at half-mast in capitals around the world. King Faisal had been a giant of his time, and his sudden, violent death left a vacuum not just in the Middle East, but in the landscape of global politics. The world had lost a wise and moderating voice. Immediately the questions began. What was the motive? The official explanation was that the assassin was mentally unstable, acting alone. Faisal bin Musaid was quickly declared insane, and after a trial he was publicly executed. But for many, this simple explanation was not enough. Conspiracy theories flourished. Was it revenge for his brother's death years earlier? Was he a pawn in a larger political plot, perhaps manipulated by a foreign power that wanted to destabilize the region? Was it connected to the CIA or other intelligence agencies unhappy with his oil embargo? The questions were endless. King Faisal's legacy is immense. He is remembered as the great modernizer who balanced progress with tradition, steering his country through a period of unprecedented change. He established the foundations of the stable, wealthy, and influential nation that Saudi Arabia is today. His reforms in education and governance continue to shape the kingdom. Yet, his death remains shrouded in mystery. The official story of a lone deranged assassin has never fully satisfied everyone. And so, the story of King Faisal ends with an unanswered question, a final tragic mystery surrounding the life of a truly remarkable leader.